Well, welcome back to part 2 of this 2-part webcast, Sensory Disabilities and Technology, Achieving Competitive Integrated Employment. I'm Rachael Rounds. I manage our Business Connections program at VCU's Rehab Research and Training Center. And if you were here for the first part of this, Greg has switched rooms. So I'm going to let Greg and Mike introduce themselves, and then we will get to talking about the big piece of what we're here for is the technology. And Mike is going to show us some of the really interesting technology that he uses on a day-to-day basis at work. So Mike, if you want to introduce yourself again.
Sure. I'm Mike Fish. I am an accessibility consultant, also a teacher of students who are blind, and a technology access technology instructor as well.
Hey guys, I'm Greg Chittum. I am at the Virginia Rehab Center for the Blind and Vision Impaired in Richmond. I am the coordinator for community engagement there, so I deal with all sort of event planning and execution. So thanks for having us.
Thank you guys for joining us. So Mike, I really am going to kind of just let you run with this, but can you talk to us about the different kinds of technology that's out there and how useful it is into your day-to-day life at work, at home? We really
Sure.
want to kind of focus on employment, but I mean, I'm sure these things can be used all over the place.
Yeah, that's a very big risk you run by having me, just go off and run with this. But for sure, as a blind person, I use technology on a day-to-day basis at home and at work. But from a home leisure kind of standpoint, honestly, I use it in the kitchen. I use one of the apps I'll show you later to identify things in my pantry, in the kitchen. My wife is totally blind, and we've got 4 kids, and so we use a lot of different tools from apps to read the mail to JAWS, which is a job access with speech, a software that's on our computer so that we can answer emails and read things for the kids for school and things like that. Braille devices so that we can read to our kids, because Braille books aren't always, they're not available at your local bookstore. So you got to find ways to make things accessible to meet the needs that we have. And those are kind of some basic ways that we do it. Sometimes we need sighted assistance, visual interpreting services to, read instructions on boxes or get a really good picture of the family. It was Easter, so we had to get someone to help us grab a picture of the family, when we're all dressed up and all that kind of stuff. So there's multiple uses. At work, it's to get my job done. I mean, let's just call it what it is. I've got to answer emails. I've got to compose reports. I have to utilize spreadsheets. I have to check websites and go through different web pages and make sure that things are accessible for students. Google Docs, Sheets, Slides, Microsoft Office suite of stuff. All that stuff is accessible utilizing a multitude of different ways. Apps, Braille, the screen reader program. So kind of a broad stroke overview of how I use it.
Great. You mentioned JAWS, and what's exciting for, I think, some of us who will be watching this is that to be honest with you, I don't know that I've ever seen it in action. So it will be really cool to watch you just kind of talk us through what it does for you.
Yeah, sure.
Start with JAWS.
Absolutely. I mean, usually when you think of JAWS in action, you're thinking of the 1990 movies with the big old shark, or the Jaws of Life, heaven forbid. But today we're talking about job access with speech, which is a screen reader, which means it literally reads what's on the screen. So it'll tell me what I'm doing on the computer. It will, when I type something, it's going to actually repeat it back. So I'm going to first start by opening a Word document, and I'll show you just the real simple ways to do that. I want to, everything I do is utilizing the keyboard. I don't use a mouse. It's all keyboard command driven. And some of those commands are JAWS commands, meaning used by the screen reader. But most of them are going to be Windows commands, meaning you too, can learn how to use these commands to make your job, your time on the computer a little bit more productive and do things a little more quickly once you learn them. So I'm going to hit the Windows key and open Word.
Search box edit. W-O.
And hit enter here.
Word 2016 app. Press right Word. Enter. Opening Word.
So you hear Jaws told me
Document
opening Word, document
Full view.
one word, and it's in edit mode. So just by hearing what I hear, I know exactly what I am, what I'm, where I am and what I'm doing. So I'm going to type in here.
A-L-L-O, hello, A-L-L. All, exclaim, enter. T-A-N-K, thank, O-U-U-L-O-4-J-O-R-G, join you. U-S-J-O-J, space, J-O-R-N, R-G, joining, U-S. T-O-2-E-A-O-N, learn, L-O-E, more, A-V-O, O-V-A, space, A-B-O-U-T, about, A-C-E-S-I-B-L-E, accessible, T-E-C-H-N-O-L-O-G-Y. Techno space A-O-P-E ho O-U-U-S-O-L-E co A-W-A Y-O-A L-O-F-T-H the W-E-B-S-A-T webcam O-O-E more O-R-L-E-D informed B-U-T but L-O-E more R-M-P-O-R-T-A-N-T-L importantly L-O-E more E-X-C-R-T-E-D excited T-O-2 K-O-W no W-A-T what? Is P-O-L-L-B-L-E possible L-O-R-4-A-P-O-O-N person W-A-O who is B-L-I-D blind and N-A-O-W-T-A-E they cats O-P-L-E-T-E complete T-E the A-E-C-T-A-K tax S-T space T-A-K tas W-U D-O do B-U-T but R-N-A-D-R-F-E-O-E-N-T different W-A-Y.
So you heard it
Exclaim
say every letter I typed, but then also the words when I hit space. So I'll read it.
Webcast. Thank you for joining us to learn more about accessible technology. I hope you come away from this webcast more informed, but more importantly, more excited to know what is possible for a person who is blind and how they can complete the same tasks you do, but in a different way.
And so she read the entire thing that I just wrote. That is JAWS in a in the form of a Word document. Okay, I can use JAWS to browse a web page, to create or browse, look through an Excel spreadsheet, PowerPoint, Google Doc, Google Sheet, Google Slide. Most programs that are accessible. And if you were in part one, you learned, we talked about accessible a little bit, but it's meaning equal access to everyone. So one of the things that means for someone who's using a screen reader is that things are labeled properly. There's not a graphic where it just says graphic, which tells me nothing. I don't know that graphic has a picture of a dog doing cartwheels, or is it a picture of Greg and his lovely family. I don't know what that graphic is. So if it just says graphic, it has to be labeled with alternative text so that JAWS will read what that picture is. Also, when you're talking about web pages, they need to be navigable by web page elements. Those could be headings or edit boxes so that you can type in information like I just did in this Word document, or it could be by having check boxes so that I can make a selection while I'm working through a web page. All those things need to be considered. Some applications are just very visual based applications that take a lot to label, but they're not accessible if they're not labeled properly, which is a disadvantage for someone who's blind because they're not able to access them with a screen reader. It's not a screen mind reader, it's a screen reader. So it doesn't know what the developer meant when they made the page if the developer of the page didn't label things properly. It's not a screen guesser. It can't infer what's not there. It's not a human being. It's an algorithm and programming software. So it cannot do the thinking that the person behind the keys is able to do to provide that information. I want to show one other thing, because one of the big things that folks get, sometimes we find, oh, well, I sent a PDF. or I sent a Word document, so that should now be accessible to my employee. Well, the problem with that is that your Word document was an image, or your Word document had unlabeled graphics in it, so they missed the point of what the document was about, or your PDF was a straight image and there's text in the image, but you just snapped a picture of that text and it's not coming through clearly. So JAWS can help a little bit by taking that PDF, for example, and pulling the text out to a Word document. So I'm going to show you how that works really quickly.
Alt F4, Micros, don't say space. Excel Practice Blind Design 2022 Intro and Application Fillable
This
Form.
says it's a fillable form
Read
.pdf. I'm going to convert this to a Word document to make it a little bit easier to read.
Okay.
If I hit the right keys, here we go.
Applications, context, pictures, convenient.
And I
OCR
basically
to
did an
Word with
equivalent of a
JAWS.
right click. And I went down here in JAWS. It says convenient OCR to Word with JAWS. I'm going to hit enter here.
Enter, leaving menus, Saturday seminar December. Document OCR started.
And it's clicking, which is telling me it's processing.
So while it's thinking, I just, really, this just allows you to do anything basically on the computer. And so, maybe if more employers were aware that this was an option for people who are blind, or if employment specialists knew what kind of supports were out there like JAWS. Greg mentioned earlier, it's just about the education.
It really is, yeah. It would be helpful. I mean, I can do a lot of things on the computer, but some things JAWS can, like I said, it can't make things accessible if they're not coded to be, like websites, for example. It can enhance some things and help that way, but sometimes JAWS is not the miracle worker. It's not going to make everything work really, really nicely and make everything accessible. It's going to provide access to things, but it's not going to be able to do it if it's a coding situation. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the employers need to be aware that this is available, that this is out there. There's other alternatives. I mean, every Windows PC has Microsoft Narrator. So if you're going to try and run your application on a Windows machine, look up some Narrator keystrokes, turn on Narrator, and try it out. Mm-hmm. There's a one called NVDA. It's non-visual desktop access. That's another free screen reader you could install on your machine and try that out, learning some of the basic commands. Is it at least navigable? And those are free alternatives to JAWS, which does cost a little bit more, but it's kind of the Cadillac of screen readers. So
right. And I don't want to get us off topic too much, but that just made me think about, it's a reasonable accommodation, right? For an employer to purchase JAWS, or you would think.
You would like to think that, and it definitely, I feel that it is a reasonable accommodation, as long as the employee is comfortable with the screen reader. Now, mm-hmm. You can't, hey, we purchased JAWS, and this person's never heard of JAWS before. The employee never heard of JAWS before. They're not going to know how to use it. Or, if someone needs screen magnification, like Zoom text, which enlarges things on the screen or provides contrast filters for them. Well, we got you JAWS. Well, that then makes that individual learn a program that they don't use on their day-to-day basis, that they're not familiar with. It's one thing to train the individual on the employer's program, whether that be like their platform, their interface that they use to do the job. But to have to train them on, no one expects them to have to train them on the JAWS program that they've never touched before, or right. Zoom that they've never used. So I think you got to be careful by saying, oh yeah, well, we've done this. We've checked this box, by ordering this program on all, for our machines. But that doesn't help if that's not what the individual needs.
Good point.
And so I think that's where the employment specialist can come into place and kind of talk with the employee on advocating for what they need to do the job effectively.
Yep.
So yeah, so there was something else in there that you mentioned and I forgot what it was. I was going to go talk about, but JAWS, definitely. So it is a reasonable accommodation. And one other thing we're going to talk about later when I talk about apps, I feel it could be another reasonable accommodation. Remind me of that when we get into apps. There's one particular one that could really be useful. But this has JAWS has now completed the PDF conversion. It's now a Word document. I'm going to check my title here, make sure I'm in the right window.
Title is Blind Design 2022.docs Word.
I am.
Print view.
So it's a .docs. It was a .pdf. So this is a Word document, and the text is here.
April 6th, 10th. Virginia Tech School. Dear Blind Design 2022 applicant and family.
And so I can read it.
Join
the whole document here.
Faculty and students.
And if it was a PDF, it could have just been the image, the text within an image that I would not have been able to read because it was a picture. So that's JAWS in a nutshell. Greg, you have anything to add?
I think there is one thing I wanted to mention, and that is that Mike said JAWS isn't a mind reader, it's a screen reader, and that was funny and correct. And that's what I just want all of the employment specialists to know is that in addition to training, with these pieces of software, you're also going to need to expect that there are still going to be accessibility limitations, out there. And accessibility is its own beast of a topic. So while JAWS, NVDA, Narrator, we've come such a long way with these programs, Zoom text for magnification, all that kind of stuff. There are still going to be some, and Mike can speak to this even better than I can, but there are going to be some tasks, some online websites or programs, whatever, that are just not going to play well with these screen readers. They're going to be labeled poorly or whatever. And so as an employment specialist, I would like for you guys to be aware that these programs exist, that your clients may need to get training on them. And when they're being used on the job, they're going to be, hopefully, they're working great and everything the job's getting done. But there are going to be times, I think, where it just might not be accessible to that employee, and you may have to go more of a customized employment direction.
And that's absolutely right. I think there's going to be situations where the employee is going to know their screen reader like the back of their hand, but for whatever reason the system's not going to be accessible, not going to play nice with it, doesn't meet the accessibility guidelines to use it, whatever the case may be, then yes, absolutely, customized employment for that job may be necessary to look into. These aspects work, these aspects are not able to be completed. So definitely being aware, and I think the best thing you can do as an employment specialist is be aware of what's out there. And if you're going to have someone who needs JAWS, or screen reader or magnification, know what the limitations are of that software, and know what the benefits are of that software, because there's maybe times where that individual you're working with may not know, they may not know about the OCR component I just showed you with JAWS. And so they may just flat out say PDFs are not accessible. I need reasonable accommodation would be to make everything, a Word document.
Yeah.
No, just 2 or 3 more key presses on your end as the end user to make that PDF accessible. So
yeah, I'm glad that y'all brought that up, because while you were talking, Mike, and I think I just was letting you talk and not trying to interrupt. I was thinking, well, what do you do when JAWS can't do what you need it to do? What's our option here? And I think you guys hit, on customizing the role, around what's available.
And that's once that you've tried every alternative you can come up with.
Yeah.
You know, you've reached out to the company who develops the software. You've reached out to people who use it, who are you know, either instructors in it or daily users of the software that you're trying to use. You know, you reach out to see you check with your resources. So if you know, you know, if you happen to know that someone else is blind who's in the agency or the company, and they're able to access it, well, then figure out what are they doing to make that work before you try to customize the job.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure, I say, you've looked at all your options first.
Yep. Good point. Do you want to talk about some of the apps that are on your phone and how they can help with work, or am I getting ahead of us?
No, I think we're good for that. Absolutely. So, you know, mobile devices are their own beast in a lot of ways. So one of the things that I utilize, you know, I prefer the iPhone over the Android. Both have what are called screen readers, similar to JAWS, but they're on the mobile platform. So Android has TalkBack. So TalkBack is a screen reader that's on Android devices, and it allows the information on the screen to be read to the user, as well as for them to interact with it, such as reading emails, texts, opening apps, downloading things, all those kinds of things. They're available using TalkBack on an Android device, and they're built into Android devices. So that does take a little bit of training, and the same with iPhones. They take a little bit of training to learn how to use that software to be most effective with it.
You have
Oh, so the other thing that we have is the iOS products, or the Apple line of smartphones, and they take gestures as well, and finger gestures, as well as taps and swipes and different fingers, and there's combinations of those that make that screen reader voiceover work. And every iPhone has it. Every Apple product has voiceover on it. I'm going to go in a quick teaching moment here is that, you know, everyone might think, oh, I'm using voiceover. It's Siri. No, Siri is Siri. Siri is the doer. Siri is that assistant, that the reason why you tell your phone to do something and it does it. Voiceover is the reader. You know, on Android, you've got TalkBack as the reader, and Bixby or OK Google, or, you know, whatever your assistant is, that's the assistant. It's the doer. So I use an iPhone on a daily basis, and I use VoiceOver to read my screen and access my emails and my contacts, my texts, notes, everything like that. So I'll show you that really quickly here.
Speech on. Monday, April 18th. Screen curtain off.
There we go. So I don't know how well this is going to show up on the screen.
Twitter, 6 minutes ago.
I don't know what Twitter is. Let's just go here. Here we go.
Test, button, passcode field. 0 of 6 values entered. Secure.
There we go. All right. So now I'm on my home screen.
Home, test, podcasts. Messages, control. Bookmarks folder, 6 photography folder, 2 productivity folder, 12 apps. Apple folder, 21 apps. Google folder, 7 apps.
So you see I have a folder, and it tells me how many apps are in each. I'll open this one. I just double tap the screen.
Docs.
I tap the screen twice with one finger to open the app or the folder. I'm going to take one finger and swipe it to the right, and I'm going to scroll through these apps.
Google Calendar, in iCloud. Classroom, recently updated. Google Earth, in iCloud. Google Earth. Google Earth.
So there's nothing else that way. I'm going to go back to the left.
Classroom, recently updated.
Just one finger.
Google Calendar, in Docs. Drive. Slides, in iCloud. Sheets, in iCloud. Test, Google, heading. Actions available.
And so that is how I can navigate from item to item and double tap to open one of them. And if you learn those gestures, you can do pretty much anything on your phone or your iPad that you want to do. There's quicker ways to do things like changing pages. That's a different gesture, playing or pausing audio, entering and answering phone calls. Those are different gestures, but if you can swipe left and right with one finger and double tap on the screen, tap twice quickly. You can access anything on this device or your iPad with VoiceOver, including the keyboard so you can type. It just takes a little bit extra time to do that, swiping to each letter and double tapping what you want. That's the basics of using what's built in out of the box. I want to talk about that really quickly if I can, and then I'll jump into some apps real quick. One of the things is, we've come a really long way than 10 years ago. 10 years ago, the stuff that I'm showing you today wasn't even around. Well, and some of it was. JAWS was there, but it couldn't do as much as it does now. It didn't have that OCR capability I showed you. The iPhone 10 years ago, okay, maybe a little bit longer than 10 years ago, didn't even have VoiceOver. It just didn't occur to people at Apple. They didn't come up with it that way. The first iPod was not accessible. The iPod shuffles are not accessible. Those devices. But then the iPhone came out, the 3G or whatever it was, the 3S or something. That one came out and that had VoiceOver on it, and it couldn't do as much as it does now, but it was a start. But nowadays, there's off-the-shelf technology. I can go into a Best Buy and I can get a laptop and it has narrator installed on it. I can go to Apple stores or wherever and get a Mac computer and it has VoiceOver on it. I can go get an Amazon device or a Google Home device or whatever, and they talk to me. That's kind of what they're designed to do. But 10 years ago, that wasn't the case. Those things if I wanted a screen reader on a computer, I'd have to pay hundreds of dollars or more to get that installed, to have that on the computer. It wasn't an option out of the box. I can go buy a talking scale. I don't want to go step on a talking scale, but I can go buy one if I need that information. There's talking blood pressure cuffs. There's talking, thermometers, so that you know the temperature of the meat. There's so many different things. There's barcode scanners that can scan barcodes and tell you what your items are that just weren't available. And some of them do cost more money than the standard things do, but some of them, like I talked about, the computers and the Amazon and Google devices, I can buy a Fire tablet from Amazon for the same price that someone sighted would buy it, and it has accessibility built in. If you don't need it, you don't know it's there.
Right.
But it's available off the shelf for the same price as it is for you, who can see and don't need it. So that's a really awesome thing that things have come to that level, but there's more that can be done. And a lot of that comes down to accessibility, making things, providing access to everyone, equal access to everyone, regardless of the disability. And that's what accessibility really is. We're going to dive into apps real quick. One particular app I'm going to show you is Seeing AI. That's on iOS products. Another app that's on both is SuperSense AI or Envision AI. They're both on Android and Apple. But I'm going to make Siri do the heavy lifting here.
4:21 p.m.
Open Seeing AI. One of the things that Seeing AI can do is read text. So if I want to read the title of this book I have over here.
Robotics. Over 330 helping people change. Over 350,000 in print. Helping people change. In print. Helping people in print. Over 350,000 in print. Helping people 350,000 in print.
So this is on a short text channel. So whatever I point the camera at, it's going to read it. And this app is free download, by the way. And I'm going to go to change it to document.
Quick help, recognizing ink channel, short text, document.
Now it's on a document mode. It's going to know when I put it over a page in this book. And it's going to tell me that and snap a picture. Let's see if I can get it.
Hold steady.
It says hold steady, and it took the picture.
Back button.
And now I can swipe through and read the text on the
scan result. Heading. Why focus? 97. An anger management program for domestic violence offenders. A state employment service. The topic of conversation will be, they may be eager to receive its services.
So it's reading the text that was on the page.
Very cool.
Pretty awesome, because I can now access printed material that I otherwise would not be able to do without somebody, reading it to me in an audio format, which is fine, or providing an electronic document, which is not always possible in certain situations. So that is an app. It can do many other things, currency identification. It can read barcodes. There's a lot of other features that app can do, but really accessing printed material is one of the struggles of someone who's blind or visually impaired if they're not made in accessible electronic format.
Folder.
One other thing I want to show as far as a device goes, and I'm going to dive back to apps real quick, is a Braille display. I have a Braille display here in front of me. I don't know what's going to pop up on the screen here when I try this, but this is a 20-cell Braille display. I'm going to turn it on, and I don't know if you can see the little dots right here. But
kind of.
it says starting, and then there's a little moving symbol right there. But this is a unit that provides Braille. I can put Braille. I can put text files on here. I can connect it to my computer or my phone, and so whatever pops up in voice on either of those devices comes up in Braille here on the screen. I can also take notes with this unit. It has an editor on it, calculator, simple functionality like that. But it allows me to use my devices without, a headset in, or just if I wanted Braille for proofing purposes, things like that. Also, for deafblind individuals, it provides a way to equally access materials. For folks who are unable to hear the screen reader, or who prefer to read in Braille, because it's another form of reading other than just print, is Braille. And these devices, these Braille devices, allow for someone who wants to access with Braille or can only access with Braille the ability to do so.
Interesting.
I know you may know about Braille, but I think it's good to hit on Braille that, people may say that Braille is it's kind of dying out. It's unnecessary with audio and things like that, but it's completely the opposite. Braille is dead the day that print is dead. And since that's not the case right now, neither, Braille is not dead either, because as soon as we say, okay, let's get rid of every single printed material that we have, then I say we can get rid of Braille. But until that point, it's a form of literacy and it needs to be preserved and utilized.
Yeah, agree completely. You were talking about apps, and sorry if I'm getting you off track, but I wanted to touch on some of those apps that are out there that are kind of interactive. There's a person on the other end of the app reading for an individual. So
visual assistance apps.
Yes.
Okay, sure. There's two big ones that come to mind. One is called Be My Eyes. That's BEMYEYES, Be My Eyes. And so that is a volunteer app where people volunteer to be kind of sighted assistant for blind folks who call in. And they can ask questions, what are the directions on this box, or what is this item, or what color is this? I wouldn't ask does this shirt make me look fat, because I don't want to know the answer to that. But I might want to know what color is this shirt. And I might want that human interaction, and I can get that from Be My Eyes. Be My Eyes is a completely volunteer-based program. So if you installed the app Be My Eyes, you could choose to become a volunteer on there, and then people would connect to you through the app, and that you could answer their questions, or they would need visual assistance. That's really useful. But from a user standpoint, I'll use that for basic tasks, stuff that's not going to be confidential, or something that's not going to be private information, so to speak, But if I want to get, and sometimes I'll need to do my mail, or I got a new bank card and I need those numbers, or things like that, or help with my taxes, for example, I'll use something called IRA. That's AIRA, and that's IRA. That's a visual interpreting service where the people are background checked, They sign non-disclosure agreements so that your information is private. They're able to email you. So if you get mail, for example, and you only want the amount and who to call to pay it, they can pull that from the mail, and then email that information to you. They have job seeker programs where if you're doing a task that's job related, that they can, there's no cost for those tasks in 30-minute intervals. You could sign up for that. I've had students who used it for their resume, to check their resume, or a job application, to submit that and make sure, okay, what's in red? Why won't this submit? What did I miss? Things like that. But that program is really cool because they can help you, navigation tasks if you want. They can help you. I have had someone help, take pictures of the kids, because you don't ever want to see a picture I try to take with my camera. That's for sure. But any number of things. Those cooking directions I talked about. I'm all about food, so those different things. But one of the things is you can either have a payment system where you pay for the minutes that you use, or you can have site access locations. And depending on the employer, that may be something that they'd want to do. If they've got an individual who needs access to this service to do their job, they may wish to be a site access location. Maybe VCU has blind students on campus and they want to become a site access location. They pay a set fee, and their campus is geo-fenced so that anyone who's within that geo-fencing can have access to IRA for free. Download the app. You'd be a site access location, and it's free for all users on that campus or in that job site or what have you. A quick example is a friend of mine that I know works at Amazon. She deals with it's either returns or shipping, something like that. And the Amazon bots literally bring her the box, and on her screen, she uses one of the screen readers we talked about, NVDA, and it brings a list of the things that are either in the box or that need to go in that box. That is on the belt in front of her. She packages that box and sends it down the line, and it gets the next box and goes and does that. Down the line it goes. Well, NVDA stopped working for that individual one day. The IT guys up in Amazon made some changes, and the algorithm didn't work well with the computer, and it didn't read what it needed to read. So they had IRA, the AIRA. So whenever she's at work now, if NVDA doesn't work, she can jump on their IRA subscription or the site access location and still get her job done as a reasonable accommodation to meet the needs. So sometimes, excuse me, we try one way that doesn't, if it doesn't work or it acts up, kind of like we talked about earlier, doesn't do the task we need it to do, there might be a need for another alternative method. So that is kind of how you can utilize both the screen reader, but also the IRA access as well.
Great. That's so, last summer was the first time I had heard about it. And I was like, this is so cool that, we've come this far, that I really like the volunteer option. But it's nice that there's also an option for, like you said, people who've signed non-disclosure agreements and they're not, your information is going to stay confidential. So it's nice that there's different options for the different things that you need to do out there. A lot of the work that I do is very confidential because we work with clients. And if I had a vision impairment, I could see where that would be the useful tool to use as opposed to the volunteer version. So they're just really, it's really interesting to me, all the things that are out there right now. So
that's what's out there today.
Yeah.
Next month, next year might be completely different or newer, more advanced stuff. So it's really staying on top of that, that technology trend and where's it going?
Yeah. Are there other, apps that you want to touch on?
No, I think those are the big ones for sure. I think that, really being able to access printed material and have access to visual information are probably the two most noted, I guess, stumbling blocks for employment accessing things in the workplace. So.
Mhm.
I mean, you could have similar solutions. You mentioned the summer. We have had a situation where, IRA wasn't really the issue. We just couldn't get. There was a Wi-Fi issue that ended up being the trouble with a job placement. But they're having to stack things on shelves and stock things and forward face items. But the phone, you can't hold it in one hand and try and do a two-handed job one-handed. It doesn't work so well sometimes. The other thing is, low-tech solutions work too. I know folks who work at fast food restaurants, and they brailled the drink, so they knew, far to the left was this drink, and the middle is this one, and next is that one. Sure, Be My Eyes could help them, but that's every time until they memorized it. Otherwise, they could just put braille labels on it, so it's kind of obtrusive and inobtrusive, and they're able to just quickly scan the label while they're getting the drink. So multiple uses for low tech and then high tech solutions of technology to kind of level that playing field for folks who are have sensory disabilities.
Definitely. Well, I really appreciate you guys taking the time to talk us through some of this today. Greg, I don't know if you have anything else you want to add, but we just really appreciate you kind of talking through accessibility, technology, O&M. I mean, it's all important information.
Well, we hope it's been helpful, and happy to do it. And we're proud of the strides that have been made, and eager to see the strides that are soon to be taken. So,
yeah,
absolutely.
Well, thanks everybody.
Thank you.
All right, that's the end of part 2.